This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by Brown Insurance Group has been providing coverage to municipalities, companies, and individuals in the region for over 73 years. As a partner of the Keystone Insurers Group, we are able to offer an extensive line of insurance products and services, from commercial services including employee benefits and liability insurance, to personal services such as home, auto, watercraft, and motorcycle coverage. We are also committed to our community. We support many charities and events in the region. Our core values of care and integrity since the inception of Brown Insurance Group has made us one of Indiana's most respected and valued insurance agencies. To make an appointment with one of our experienced specialists, call our Highland Insurance office at 219-972-6060. Brown Insurance Group. Small town values, big time resources, going beyond expectations to protect you and yours.
The Southern Ocean looms monotonous, like staring across a desert. In the desert I see nothing but brown at first. Out here I see nothing but gray. Towering gray seas become hills of slate blue and black purple, or deep aqua before blooming with brilliant white as they topple from an unstable crest. We sail ahead of the next front, intently watching for the telltale signs of change. There are infinite changes, yet when I check my log, my notes reflect monotony. Day in and day out, we edge eastward, hoping for an 8-knot speed average, 200-mile days, but settle for little more than 100. Today's tally is only 67, an average of less than 3 knots. I dig deep through the stores on board to find patience packed among the bins of repair parts, spare lines, batteries, sail ties, weather gear, flashlights, oil and engine spares, fuses, electrical connectors, and full duffel bags of freeze-dried food. There isn't any patience on board. I'm challenged by the impatience and exasperated by the rate I'm burning through cookies. The sea haunts me as I sit quietly in the evening light, watching the endless roll of waves, trying to understand what has happened to me and what I've learned. The answer isn't easy, nor is how it came to be. But to get it, I bared my soul to the sea. I reduced myself to heart, mind, blood, fatigue, torn tissues, and tears. In every encounter along the way, someone asked me to tell the tale of the most frightening moment or the deepest emotional ravine, and I can't. These aren't individual parts of the journey. I didn't go to sea to beat it or fear it. I went to sea to live it, to exist in a symbiotic way with the wind and the seas. I journeyed to learn more about what I am and where I live than to experience the fear of a single unknown. And so, in the raw breath of this evening wind, stranded on this comfortable shore, I asked myself, what do we get from all this? As a reader, I hope you are touched by some part of this book, like the sea has touched me. The sea asked me to speak for it. It asked us to consider our lives, to stop ravaging the blood of the earth and heal the gaping wounds. I am optimistic that something in this book touched you and opened your vulnerability, like the sea opened mine. I hope you've felt the same tingle, the same urge, and the same inspiration that I did. The inspiration to be better, to not feel the need to play along with bad manners, to not need another disposable bottle of water or the accumulation of unnecessary things. I am optimistic we've been inspired to understand that this is our life, our only chance to be responsible to our land, to our hearts, to our ways, inspired to be aligned with our world, and as an ally of the ocean, the earth, and even beyond, an ally of this immense, unfathomable universe. This is where I learned to sail on the southern shores of Lake Michigan, from here around the world.
Welcome to our show. We're coming to you from Duneland Pizza in lovely Chesterton, Indiana. And with us today is Dave Rearick, who is the author of Spirit of a Dream. And he's going to be talking to us a bit about himself and a bit about what brought him to write this book. And so welcome to our show.
Yes.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me. What a great opportunity this is.
And before we let you tell about the story, this is really all about you, this booth, because you built this booth that we're sitting at.
I did. So my primary occupation for my whole life, and what I used to pay my bills and stuff, is carpentry and construction and stuff like that. And I was born right here. I was born in Gary, Indiana, and we moved to the Chesterton area when I was 9 years old. And I probably had my first Duneland pizza about that time, 9 or 10 years old, which was about 45, 50 years ago. I've been coming to Duneland Pizza since I was a kid, and then Craig, the owner, and I are great friends. And when he got into remodeling some here, he tapped me to build this booth and do some remodeling in this room. He wanted a very beachy atmosphere, and we hung the boat up in the ceiling, and we built a deck outside. And Craig and I have been good friends for a long time, so this is
and it's a great place to come, and it's great pizza.
I know. That's all I can smell right now, and I'm dreaming of pizza.
The unfortunate thing is they're only open Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, I know. But my kids, myself, still loves it here. But I just want to let everyone know that this is all about you, and that you built the.
Even where we're sitting is all about you.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a bit about yourself.
So, like I said, I was born in Gary, Indiana, so I'm a region rat, right?
Yeah.
A native to Indiana. We moved to Chesterton when I was 9 years old, out to a little community called Dune Acres, near on the beach there, which is Dune Acres is kind of neat in that it's surrounded by a national park. So as a kid, I loved the outdoors, the nature, and being on the lake and scrambling through the woods and building forts and camping out at night and stuff like that in the summertime. And at about 12 years old, I was taken for a sail by a friend of mine, Pam Tittle. She was the daughter of the people that owned the Tittle's grocery stores in northern Indiana.
Yeah.
And Pam took me out sailing on a green sunfish that they owned, and I was just infatuated with it. I just fell in love. We got the boat tipped up on the side, and I thought the whole world's going to come to an end, and we got everything under control. And I just became so infatuated with sailing, very passionate about it. When you're a young man at age 10, 11, 12, the school teachers take you down to the library and say, okay, you've got to check a book out of the library before we go back to our classroom, kids. Young boys aren't supposed to read, but I would sneak out every sailing book I could get my hands on.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And I got very passionate at that time about these. At that time, it was mostly men. There were very few women, but who were sailing single-handed across the Atlantic Ocean in the O-Star race, and then ultimately around the world. The first person to sail single-handed around the world nonstop was Robert Knox Johnson. He did that in 1969. So for me, in 1969, I was 11 years old, so it was really new sport at that time, and I just became fascinated by it. And I don't come from a sailing family, so my family aren't sailors. They're all golfers. I can swing a club, but you don't want me to do it in public. I can put a boat in your left pocket and not touch either side of the pocket. But so I just developed this passion to single-handed race, and when I would get the chance and nobody was looking, I would take out the sunfish by myself, and then I grew into lasers and Hobie cats, and I learned to sail the Hobie cat by myself. Wow. And then I went on from there. I went out and played with the Hurricane out in Outward Bound School in Rockland, Maine for a couple seasons. And my sailing just kind of took on a life of its own. Sadly, my father passed away when I was 22 years old, so I had to get a lot more serious about making a living. And so I really focused on the carpentry and construction and stuff like that. But not wanting to let my dream go, I just kept sailing every which way I can. And Michigan City Yacht Club in Michigan City Harbor provided a racing opportunity, so I raced throughout the Great Lakes and the Mackinac races. And then ultimately, so it was about 1995 or so, got involved in a boat called Geronimo, and I took that on some very big single-handed races on the Great Lakes, and just kept trying to get one notch, keep my dream in play, although I was getting in my 40s, 45. And there was some good friends of mine that were involved in the Great Lakes Single-Handed Society, Jeff and Gay, and they become very successful with their business and wanted to do bigger races around the world, so Jeff tapped me to take care of his boats for him.
Oh.
And I guess one night over a couple of beers, maybe it was, I said one too many times how I wanted to sail single-handed around the world. And
Over just a couple beers?
I never have more than two at any one given time. And so ultimately, you know, I got an email from Jeff. I was down in Florida, putting together Bodacious 3, which is the name of his boat, for a race from Fort Lauderdale down to Jamaica called the Pineapple Cup race.
Oh.
And I was getting it all prepared for that, and I got an email, and it's kind of like, you know, when you got one of those notes in grade school from the girl across the room and said, "Do you like me? Yes or no?" Circle.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
So I got this email, and it said, you know, I've been thinking about it. If you really want to do this single-handed race around the world, we should get you the boat you're going to do it in. And I must have read that email 100 times. I held the computer upside down, shook it, tried to figure out whether this is for real or not. And I finally emailed back, well, you know, if you're serious about it, you know, I'll go looking for a used boat. And he said, no, let's build a new boat. So we did finally get together face to face, and we discussed this all out and all that stuff, and gave me the okay to go looking for a new boat. So I got to investigating boats and ended up looking at a boat that was being built in New Zealand called a Kiwi 40. Designed by Bruce Farr, and the head project guy down there is Lapo Insulati. And we ultimately culminated a deal for that and had the boat built and commissioned with the intent of sailing in the Global Oceans Race, single-handed around the world. When we launched the boat in New Zealand, the Global Oceans Race was coming through Wellington, so I was there in the mix with all that, just as we had launched the boat, and the boat was probably one of the fastest Class 40s in the world at that time. But then the race ultimately, the single-handed race around the world got canceled. And my sponsors said, you know, hey, you're all dressed up and ready to go to the dance. If you want to go ahead and go. And so without much delay, I forwarded on to, you know, doing the preparations, and then took off in October 2nd of 2013 and headed off around the world. To sort of mitigate that self-indulgent experience, I endeavored to create a blog and do a lot of kids educational work, and not just for kids but for everybody, just kind of share this whole experience with people. So we were prepared with electronics on the boat to take videos and offload them to the computer and up to space.
But how amazing for kids to be, or anybody, to be able to follow along with you as you're doing this.
Yeah, it really worked out well. So I had a great friend, Mark Petrakis, out in California, so he would receive my missives. He'd clean them up a little bit, because it's really hard when you're focused on sailing this boat all by yourself and it's storming out to really be focused on writing real well. So I would write down the gist of it. He would clean it up, add a couple of photographs I downloaded to it, and then that experience would be shared with, I think we hit like 6,000 people every time we put a blog out.
Man, that's great.
And a lot of the stuff we started doing were called Explorer Guides, which were designed especially for kids. So I used to take my godkids out for dinner, and they would love the placemat that had the games on it, you know, or match the words, or find your way through the maze. And I thought, well, why can't that be an educational thing about the environment and science and all that kind of stuff? So we did these Explorer Guides that were based on that sort of idea, and it'd be talking about wildlife, or about the weather, or about the ocean currents, or whatever might be in our way as wherever we're sailing. And so that was Bodacious Dream Expeditions. The name of the boat was Bodacious Dream.
I love this.
Bodacious Dream.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
We're going to rename our show Bodacious Dream.
There you go. So the funny thing is, so the owners, the sponsors, have a series of boats named Bodacious, and then they had those were sailing boats, the racing boats, and then the other smaller boats were Bodette and Boadicea. And so they wanted this one named Bodacious Dream, which just fit perfectly with what we were accomplishing, was a Bodacious Dream.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's fabulous.
So it took you, what, 285 days?
Yeah, so it was 8.5 months, you know, from start to finish. So I started October 1st or 2nd of 2013, and finished in 2014.
And where did you start?
Started from Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay.
And sailed down to Bermuda, and I stopped in Bermuda for a few days just because I needed to make sure that my electronics were working, my satellite communications were working, and I had a little bit of unfinished business that had to get closed up that I hadn't been able to close up before I left. And then from Bermuda to Cape Town, South Africa. That was 42 days of nonstop sailing. And what's interesting about the currents and the weather systems of the world is you don't just sail from, you know, let's see, the camera's looking at me, so from Bermuda here on the East Coast to Cape Town, South Africa down here, you have to sail down around the bulge of Brazil, along the southern South American coast and then across the South Atlantic, because there's a big high pressure system in the South Atlantic where there's no wind, so you can't just make that straight line thing. So it's a roundabout way, but it's a faster route actually.
Did you see any aliens or anything during the Bermuda Triangle part?
Not that I can document.
Okay, just checking.
We told you we'd ask questions a lot.
No, that's quite all right. The interesting thing is, because you're in a relatively sleep-deprived state of mind, you're pretty sleep-deprived, because I'm only sleeping at 15-minute intervals.
Yeah.
So I'm sleeping 15 minutes, and then waking up, checking things are right, and then taking another nap. So once you start to build a certain amount of fatigue, there's a certain amount of inherent hallucination that comes with it all. And that's not seriously hallucination where like the world's turning checkered and
Right. Monsters are coming up, yeah.
It's like a swinging hank of rope over here all of a sudden becomes somebody hanging out down below you. You look at him and it's just a piece of
So,
rope.
question, was that what your day was made up of? For it was 256 days that you were out, right?
Yeah.
So every day you just got 15 minutes sleep, woke up, and then
So this
bit about the business?
So you're managing the boat 24/7. So you're sailing all the time, you're navigating all the time, you're watching out for ships, things you might hit that cause you harm.
Sure.
And so we figured out that you basically have a 20-minute horizon. This particular boat, the Class 40, is designed to be a racing boat, so it's relatively fast. It's often sailing at 10, 12 knots, which is pretty fast. And if you figure a commercial ship is coming at you at the same speed or even faster, the closing distance, a 6-foot human being can see about 7 miles before the curvature of the earth puts something behind, out of sight.
Sure.
So for that ship coming at you and you going towards it, we figure that horizon is about 20 minutes. So if you sleep for 15 minutes, you can wake up and avert a collision at sea.
Right.
We also have alarms with our electronics and stuff that let us know if there's a ship close by with AIS and radar and stuff like that. So you get into the system of what we call cluster naps. So for an hour and a half, I would take 15-minute naps. I would take a little kitchen timer, a little electronic kitchen timer, clip it right on my collar here, hit it for 15 minutes, and I'd lay down. And the first 15 minutes, you're just relaxing. It would go off, and you get up and just check the instruments and look around, make sure everything's okay, hit the button, and go back down again. And about the second or third time, after you get used to this, usually it happens the first time, but the second or third time, then you actually fall asleep for 15 minutes. And you do that maybe 5, 6, 7 times, and then you're awake for an hour or two. So it's not like you sleep 15 minutes and you're awake 23 and a half
Right.
hours.
Okay.
In our day-to-day sleep cycle, we sleep for 8 hours and we're usually up for 16. So if you think about it, 1/3, 2/3, it's kind of the same type of thing. So you might sleep 5, 6, or 7 of these 15-minute intervals and then be awake for an hour and a half or two. But if there's nothing really going on, then you try to sleep more of these intervals. You try to stay ahead of it.
Right.
How long did it take you to get over that cycle?
I don't
You
know
got
that I
back?
ever really get over it.
Oh boy.
I've always been a very interrupted sleeper to begin
Yeah.
with, so I've always slept at short periods. And even to this day and age, I probably don't sleep more than an hour and a half at a time. But the first stopover, big stopover in Cape Town, South Africa, I wake up in the middle of the night and then you have to kind of figure out, like, where am I at? This isn't right. This isn't the boat.
Right.
So there's a whole lot of things going on in your mind that have to kind of readjust to it. But it comes fairly quickly, and it's what I do and it's what I love, and so I'm not surprised by it.
So what were some of the most interesting things you saw along the trip?
Gosh, the whole experience was tremendously interesting, and I relate a lot of it through the book. Some of the experiences are just personal observations of myself or the environment or whatever. But there was a time, one of the interesting things going on that first leg down to Cape Town was coming across a big sea turtle in the middle of the southern Atlantic
Oh,
Ocean.
wow.
So probably the turtle's about the size of this table. I'm going to say 4 or 5
Wow.
feet, 4 feet in diameter probably.
Beautiful.
And I sailed past it, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And I thought, well, I'm not in a hurry. I'm not racing. I can turn around and go back. So I turned around and came back, sailed around a bit till I found him, and studied him for a little while, or her. I'm not sure if it was a male or a female, but so she would dive down, and the back feet would be up in the air. I wasn't sure if they were trying to hide from me or whatever it was, but the flippers were every bit as big as my hands. And I thought about, in the old days, they would capture that turtle, and it would make meat and fresh soup for a crew of 10 people on a big ship or 20 people on a big ship. But it dawned on me at that point that I was thinking, well, what is he doing out here all by himself? Why is this turtle out here? And it dawned on me, this is where they live. I'm the one who's trespassing.
What are you doing out here?
What am I doing out here? And so with great respect at that point, I said a gentle goodbye and gave a wave of salute and went on my way and thanked that turtle for allowing me to pass
Right.
through its neighborhood unharmed. So that was,
Wow.
it was kind of a neat experience. Of course, the storms. Everybody wants to know about the storms, and there are always storms. Weather is just part of your life. You're living in. You're thoroughly embedded in the environment. So it's, whether you're wet or cold or warm or hot or hungry or tired or whatever it is, you're living on this boat in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the environment. And so the storms that come, the weather that changes is all part of the whole thing, and following that weather and predicting. Yeah.
What type of gear did you have on a boat? Did you get weather reports, or were you able to see satellite images, or?
Yeah, so nowadays on the boats you've got access to an awful lot of electronics.
Mhm.
So the basic electronics for a boat like this are a GPS navigation system for plotting your location, radio, and stuff like that. The more interesting part of that all is a satellite communication. So I have a satellite phone, an Iridium satellite phone, and then a series of 3 or 4 little black boxes that do mysterious things if you get them all plugged together just right. They go to the computer, and then I can actually send emails off and get weather reports back from weather specialists who would. There was a weather system that commanders, weather out in New Hampshire, would follow me around, and they knew where I was at pretty much from day-to-day reports that I would give them, and then they would clue me in as to weather changes and stuff.
So they were your eyes.
They were my eyes, yeah. And they, I can download grids and stuff, so I could get weather in a small location of where I'm at, probably, something 50 miles around. But they had much more ability to look at the big picture and what's going to move here and there, and where my next problem is going to be.
Amazing.
Now I have
It
two
really
weird
is.
questions
Sure.
that don't relate to each other, but they're questions that I'm thinking of. So, dolphins, whales, sharks, like what kind of encounters did you have with those?
So the dolphins, you see a lot of the time. They it's certainly no more than 2 or 3 days between sightings, and a lot of times every day you would see some dolphins one way or another.
Did they love jumping through the wake and stuff like that?
They love jumping and playing. They consider you a play toy, so
Of
they're swimming alongside you. The really cool dolphin experiences are when you get, like, what, for lack of a better word, what I call a herd. I mean, I guess it's a pod, but
Yeah.
thousands of them, and every once in a while there'd be thousands of dolphins, all around you and going, and I would think, how cool to have, like, the ocean as your playground.
Yeah.
Go where you want to go, and these dolphins are fast and quick. And then I thought, well, wait a second, dude, that's what you got right here. You got a boat, and the ocean's your playground. So you can go anywhere you want as long as there's water there for you. So that's kind of a neat thing to see that. Whales, I only had a few different sightings of whales.
Really?
Now,
Okay.
in doing our blogs and all that kind of stuff, I had a friend, Tegan Mordemeyer, who was a whale specialist and a bit of a scientist, and so she would help me out with a lot of the wildlife sightings. So there's also a app on your phone called iNaturalist, and I had a geotagging phone, a geotagging camera. So I would take a photograph, and on that photograph it would also tell me the latitude, longitude, the time of day, and the direction I was looking. And so if I took a photograph of a bird, and this happened actually a couple times, took a photograph of a bird, and then I would upload it to iNaturalist when I got back to land and had access to Wi-Fi. iNaturalist would then send it out to all the people who were very interested in that kind of bird, and they would identify that bird. And so you had a whole lot of collective people on shore who knew a lot more about birds or whales or whatever than I did.
Sure.
And they would identify that bird, and then there were 2 instances where we got notes back from the people identified saying, wow, thank you very much, because that's the furthest north that bird has been seen and documented.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, because there's a lot of research for the environment that happens along the coastal areas, because it's real expensive to send a research ship very far out in the middle of the ocean. So a lot of the research information like that, or sightings and stuff, come from private vessels
Sure.
that are transiting the ocean.
So it's amazing. Besides your own personal experience, this was an outreach for everyone to have a unique experience that they couldn't have because they weren't on the boat with you.
That's the one thing I really wanted to try to do, is be able to share it with people, and I think the book does a really, really good job of sharing it in a personal, more intimate way than you might necessarily really want to put your life on paper for people to read. But you know, there are the times when you're lonely because it's Thanksgiving, a holiday. There are times when you're elated because you just got overrun by 1,000 dolphins and you're having a great time.
Sure.
There are times when I'm battling, a very serious storm, and you're just totally focused on only one thing, which is getting through the storm just right.
Survival.
Being able to share those beautiful things that so many people aren't ever going to get experience to makes it worthwhile. Otherwise the experience doesn't have much value.
Yeah.
Now, on the other spectrum, what about garbage and things? I mean, like, how much of that did you see? Plastics and things like that floating around? And
You know, it's interesting because that is the real buzzy topic these days is
Yeah.
ocean plastics. I'm involved with 11th Hour Racing, which is I'm an ambassador for 11th Hour Racing, and one of our things we do is we're trying to promote sustainability and be aware of the ocean environment, all that kind of stuff. So being aware of ocean plastics is really important for me. And I would have to say that a day didn't go by I didn't see plastic in the ocean
Yeah.
or garbage in the ocean.
Yeah.
I saw one big thing that might have been a floating container. I'm not entirely sure, but there was a bucket here or a plastic bag there or this or that. So it's really everywhere. It's sad, but it's the facts of life.
You know, I remember as a kid just being devastated by the fact that we'd gone to New York, which we did often, and we'd gone out on the Staten Island ferry or going over to see something, and I saw these barges just going out into the ocean, tons of seagulls and things flying around, and I remember real little asking my dad, what is that? Garbage was going to be taken out into the ocean and just dumped, because that's what they did. And even then I was like, no, that is, no.
And that's one of the things that I've done a few talks to environmental conferences and stuff like that. I do presentations. I do a lot of talks with kids in schools and stuff. And one of the things that's become apparent to me is that for the rest of human existence on Earth, we're going to be picking up after ourselves. So we're picking up after the generations that thought there was no end to being able to just dump stuff and it goes away. And now we're finding out it's everywhere. And I can only imagine if we drained Lake Michigan, we'd find a trail of beer cans between Michigan City and Chicago.
No more than that.
and everything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
So it's a shame,
yeah.
but it is a part of our world we have to pay attention to.
And that is kind of the neat thing that you are doing with the kids and trying to educate them through your experience, because I think if we do give them a firm understanding and appreciation for the environment, they'll be more aware and more conscious of the ecosystem, and what they can do can easily negatively affect the ecosystem or positively affect it. So
Yeah, it's one of the things I do every other year is we have the Atlantic Cup race, which is a Class 40 specific race, and one that I've done a couple of times, and I won in 2013 on Bodacious Stream, and it runs from Charleston to New York City and then on up to Portland, Maine. But in each of those harbors, we go to the schools and talk to the kids, and then we bring the kids down to the boats when the boats are in the harbor, so they get to meet us as skippers. And a lot of the skippers are from Europe and all around the world, so they're meeting skippers that have come from different languages and different stuff like that. But I spend time in the schools talking to the kids about sustainability and the environment, and these kids get it. One of the charts that I show is how long it takes for plastics to decompose. So up on the wall it's got a whole thing, and at the bottom it'll say plastic bottles take 200 years to decompose in the water. And I had a young girl in Charleston. She spoke up and she said, well, if it takes 200 years for the plastic bottles to decompose, then all the plastic we've ever made in the world is still here. And you think about it, it is.
Oh, yeah.
it's true. So we're coming to a close of our show, but we wanted to ask you one of the things that, want to ask you first of all, is there anything more that you want to tell us about the book?
The book's it's an easy read. It's a great read. It's very engaging. Because I do so much work with kids. I wanted very much to be able to share this experience with young adults.
Yes.
And a 7 or 8 year old might need an adult to help them read it, but for a 12 or 13-year-old, there's some wonderful life lessons in there and some great experiences, and it's been prepared for that in mind. So I would encourage people to get a copy for your kids, your godkids, your.
And how
your
do you
nieces
go
and-
about getting a copy of this book?
Well, it's Doolin Pizzeria here actually has
Okay,
has
good to
copies
know.
that they'll sell.
When
But
you come pick up your pizza, no matter
That's
where you
right.
are
Yeah.
at, you can pick up a book.
Crowley's Yacht Yard on the south side of Chicago has them on their countertop. There's a bookstore up in Winnetka that carries them, and they're also available on Amazon.
Okay.
And there's a bookstore up in Milwaukee. I'm not sure how far your viewers are, but
Oh, yeah,
Boswell,
Yeah, we've got 'em in Milwaukee.
We've got them
Yeah.
in
Boswell Books in Milwaukee
California.
has them. The bookstall in Winnetka, Illinois has them. Crowley's Yacht Yard, and there's actually a place out in the coast of Maine that has them too, at
Awesome.
the Nautical Scribe there.
Yeah. And one last question I'll leave with is, so 256 days out on the ocean. It's kind of, you kind of equate it to an astronaut going up to the International Space Station. They're up there for a fairly long period of time. And you really didn't have face-to-face contact. You kept verbal contact and email. So what was it like, that experience, when you came into dock and saw another human being for the first time?
Yeah, well, I'd stopped in Cape Town in Wellington, New Zealand.
Yeah.
The longest was 52 days.
All right.
From Cape Town to Wellington.
Yeah, because you have
most
to
of them
get
were-
fresh water and things like that.
Yeah, so you resupply a little bit, but still to be gone for a month or
Oh,
2
yeah.
months. What was truly kind of an interesting thing is that when I was all done with the trip, and I was doing some stuff with some people and fixing the boat up and this and that, some friends came down and I was trying to relate something or other, and they just walked away. And I kind of thought, well, that was awfully rude of them. And what dawned on me is, when you work with your hands, you develop calluses. And when you're around people all the time, you develop a callus to a regular conversation. And so I had lost that callus because I hadn't been in touch with people for that long. So these are close friends of mine. They weren't being disrespectful or rude. They were just, had something else that was going on, and they were, they just weren't paying close attention to me. And I back ashore now for a long enough time, people can rib you and that kind of thing, and you just go,
Sure.
okay, that's cool, no big deal, But at that time, I'd lost the calluses of human contact, and so I was not really fully aware of that. So,
Yeah.
Wow.
There's one other really neat experience. If we got a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
There's one other really wonderful experience that I encountered that is related in the book too, and I was sailing south and east of Madagascar. So I'd gone through a huge cyclone off of Madagascar, but I was near Australia. And it was late in the middle of the night, and I was down below taking my naps, and I heard thunder. And that kind of startled me because I hadn't heard thunder before. So I came up on deck, and the rainstorm passed quickly, and the deck was fresh water, and I just got kind of drenched with fresh water, and things started to clear up, and all of a sudden I saw all these glowing orbs in the water. They looked about the size of a softball, and they had that sort of iridescent color to them. But there were thousands of them, and as far as I could see, and they were flowing by as I was going by. And I was trying desperately to figure out what they were. And I was shining a flashlight on them. They looked like a tube, and I couldn't figure it out and all. And I finally said, stop trying to figure this out. Just live with where you're at. Live with your environment. Enjoy it. So I kind of let my eyes relax as these just flowed by. It was sort of like a slow motion hyperspace of Star Wars.
Oh,
These things
wow.
just like,
Yeah.
When I was in the Galapagos, at the end of the day, 4 or 5 o'clock at night, there's a little internet cafe and bar right next door, and all the different people would start to sit around and have a beer, and it'd start being a big round table. And someone was asking me what the most interesting thing had happened, and I related that story to these 2 scientists from National Geographic. And they said, well, you know what those were? And I said, I never figured it out, and I've just accepted. I just got lucky and saw something very beautiful. And they said, those are actually glow-in-the-dark squid. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, the first time we saw them, they were flying through the sky. And I said, what, you mean these glow-in-the-dark squid fly? And he goes, no. There's one species of seagull that is a nocturnal feeder. And it was a very, very dark night, and they would
And
jump
a
down
whole
and
bunch
get
of
these
them were
things. And
taking them, so it was like
so
a whole...
they would fly down and
Oh,
grab these out of the
cool.
water, and they'd fly off with these glowing orbs. And we had a great laugh about it, but that
Oh my
kind of
gosh,
solved
that
the
would
mystery.
be so
but,
cool.
The ocean's an amazing place.
Yes,
It's an
it
amazing
is.
place, and it seems like I've seen a lot of it. But if you think about it, it's just a thin line. I could see 6 miles in all directions. So I saw a 12-mile path around the world, which is like laying a human hair across a globe. It's nothing.
Yeah, amazing experience,
Yeah,
amazing.
it's great.
I can't
Well,
even
we
imagine.
can't tell you how much we appreciate making the time and
Yes.
coming on our show and sharing
Oh,
your.
thanks so
I
much for
feel
having
like
me.
I have a zillion more questions.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's other shows. If you're
Yeah,
up to it,
we can do it again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
sure.
sure.
Yeah,
Carry
we'd
on the
love
story.
to. We would
Yeah.
love to.
Thanks
We
so much
love
for
this
having me. I
place,
appreciate
and we've enjoyed this experience. And again, let's tell us a little more about the book, where they can get it.
So
called.
it's Spirit of a Dream, and it begins in a very tough situation I'm at in the about 1,500 miles off of Cape Town, South Africa. And then I go back and talk about building up and building the boat, and then carrying on the sail around the world. And I think you'll find it, quite nice. There's also a YouTube video that a friend did, sort of a trailer for the book. If you want to check that out, I think it's called Spirit of a Dream on
Okay.
YouTube, and it's about a 3-minute long with me reading some of the passages. I think you'll find the book very, very enjoyable to read. And I've had some people call me and tell me they couldn't put it down, and other people have called and said, I just wanted to savor one chapter at a time. It was just too
yeah.
good to eat it all at once.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
yeah.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And
Thank
with
you.
that, we'll say goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by Brown Insurance Group has been providing coverage to municipalities, companies, and individuals in the region for over 73 years. As a partner of the Keystone Insurers Group, we are able to offer an extensive line of insurance products and services, from commercial services including employee benefits and liability insurance, to personal services such as home, auto, watercraft, and motorcycle coverage. We are also committed to our community. We support many charities and events in the region. Our core values of care and integrity since the inception of Brown Insurance Group has made us one of Indiana's most respected and valued insurance agencies. To make an appointment with one of our experienced specialists, call our Highland Insurance office at 219-972-6060. Brown Insurance Group. Small town values, big time resources. Going beyond expectations to protect you and yours.